grief is an emotional state that knocks you off your feet. It can manifest in many ways. You may feel a range of emotions from sadness and anger to confusion and fear. When a family member dies, even children react differently from adults. Well, a local author has found a way to explain death and grief, all while honoring her niece. Well, joining us now, Alexis Arate, and we also have Dr. Alozi, because we do have a very important topic that we want to talk about. I want to thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to start with you, Alexis, because you have a beautiful story that you want to tell us about your niece. So before we talk about your book, it is in honor of your niece. Kind of tell us a little bit about her.
Yes, so like you had mentioned before, my name is Alexis Arate. I'm the author of the book Balloon Bridges, and it was inspired by my niece, Bridges Lynn Reed. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2018 due to D.R.E.S.S syndrome, and she was only 11 years old, so it took our family by shock. And unfortunately, it was the first case that the doctors explained to her mom that they've seen of D.R.E.S.S here in El Paso. So that meant that they didn't really have the capability to help treat her, or really had to do extensive research to even understand what D.R.E.S.S was. I mean, we as a family didn't even understand what it was either. So after noticing that she was experiencing some symptoms like all over the body, rashes, swelling, fevers getting as high as 108, the doctors were really trying to quickly find out what it was, because she was just experiencing a lot of fatigue from what her body was trying to fight off, but was essentially killing her in a sense. And so on top of that, internally her organs were failing. So her liver was failing, her kidney was failing, which eventually, unfortunately, led to her heart failing. But it was the recommendation of the doctors, and thanks to their research, they did try to send her to Dallas to be seen by a specialist there in hopes of receiving an artificial heart. But unfortunately, by that time, Bridges' heart was already too weak to make the trip. And she died here in El Paso.
So I know I'd never heard of D.R.E.S.S before, so we do want to bring in Dr. Alozi to kind of give us the medical side of what it is exactly.
Yeah, so like Alexa said, your niece had a condition called D.R.E.S.S, and it's drug reaction or drug rash with eosinophilia and systemic symptoms. You described it perfectly, right? So typically in kids especially, it's when they're giving an antibiotic or they're given an anticonvulsant. Some people call it an anti-epileptic. It can cause a rash, a diffuse rash. The skin can start to peel. I think the key, and Alexis described this perfectly, is it starts to affect the organs. That's the systemic symptoms. Can cause liver failure, kidney failure, heart failure. Unfortunately, a lot of people focus on the eosinophilia. It's actually an autoimmune reaction. Your body essentially starts reacting to the medication, and even if the medication is taken away, if you don't get the right treatment, which is typically high-dose steroids or things like TNF inhibitors or autoimmune blockers, it can lead, unfortunately, to demise, and so it's really sad. I will just say this, and we're going to talk about the book. I think it's important, if anybody has a take-home today, the book's critically important, but also remember, medications that we take are not benign. Right? So when people go to urgent cares and they're physicians and they want an antibiotic and they want this medication, not all medications are that simple. And so I think it's very important for people to understand that.
I know, Alexis, you are here to, of course, honor your niece, and you're doing that by a book that you wrote. So please talk to us about that.
So the inspiration did come from my niece, but it's also to honor all the loved ones that we have lost in our family. And in an odd way, I feel that grief kind of connects all of us, no matter what our background is, where we're from, what language we speak. Unfortunately, it's something that we can't escape, that everyone experiences loss of some kind. And so if I can, I started the introduction of my book with a quote from Bridges that she had asked her mom before she passed away. And it says, "I'm not crying for them, the ones who've passed away. I'm crying for the families left behind. Because what happens to them? What do they do after saying goodbye?" And so writing this book was my way of putting my grief into words, and to also try to answer Bridges' question, because I feel like her two questions were a testament of who she was,
how kind and loving she was, and that she was even concerned about the families, not so much for her, but for everybody else left behind that were grieving the loss of a loved one. And so my hope is that the message of Balloon Bridges can offer families who are grieving any grief, not necessarily associated with D.R.E.S.S, but any grief of any kind, that they can talk about it, that they don't have to feel shame for feeling grief, that they can find joy and encouragement even from just speaking the name of the loved ones that they miss. And
well, I think you're so brave for coming in today to talk about this, because I know you told me that you were so nervous.
Yes.
But you truly are an inspiration, and I'm so glad that you came in to talk to us about this book. It's beautiful. You shared a photo of her. She's beautiful, and I'm so glad that we're able to, you know, watch her live on through your words.
Yes.
And that quote was so beautiful too.
Thank you so much.
I just want to remind everyone, if you are interested in purchasing a copy of Balloon Bridges, you can just click on this story at kvie.com. And just a reminder, you can also watch this story, all of our Be Mindful stories on the KVIA ABC 7 CTV app, Roku Fire TV, Apple TV. Alex, thank you so much for joining us, sharing this beautiful story with us. And of course, Dr. Lozzi, we appreciate your insight as well.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you so much. We'll be right back.